So I'm Gene Friedman, and I'm the faculty sponsor for TNT, and I think this is wonderful. What kind of happened to TNT since we started it probably 5 years ago. So this is fantastic, and the idea of kind of figuring out where students can go and what the opportunities are, I think is great, because given this field and the great things that could be done in this field, this is fantastic. So, and yeah, Julia brought up some really interesting work. So, okay, so as so I'm supposed to run this panel. So the thing is, I kind of figured what I would do is give you a little bit of my personal background and how I got into this field. And I want to raise some questions as a result of me getting into this field, and I'm hoping we can kind of address those. So here's the thing. So in a long time ago, 95, I got my master's in electrical engineering from Purdue University, and I was really interested in machine learning and robotics. That's what I got my degree in, and so I started looking for jobs. And I got what I thought was going to be my dream job, and this is working for Hughes Space and Communications, working in satellites. Why did I think this was my dream job? Is because a satellite is a really cool robot. We're up in space, you can't get to it, has to fix itself. It's really awesome, right? So I thought that was great, and I went to work for Hughes Space and Communications in '95. And so then it kind of turned out that the organization was very big and sort of bureaucratic, and it was very difficult to get any new ideas to kind of bring them out. To give you an idea about this, so we were working on a new spacecraft, and this was in the '90s, so mid-'90s, right? And we were confined to using a microcontroller that was developed in early 1970s. And the reason for that is because that's the only thing that was radiation hardened. That's the only thing that could, in principle, survive up there, or at least was tested well enough to be able to survive up there. And so technology was it was a very strange kind of situation. On the one hand, you're dealing with spacecraft, and on the other hand, you're dealing with sort of these strange constraints. So anyway, at some point I started looking for a job, and Advanced Bionics, so this is a cochlear implant company, came on our radar, and I had an interview with them, and they liked me, and so I was super excited about this because cyborgs, right? So we went from robots to cyborgs. I thought this was going to be super cool. And I went to work for them, and they hired me as a software engineer because that's where my strengths lay, right? So I started there as a software engineer, and I'm thinking, when does the cool stuff start? And so the job they gave me is here's an old fitting system for cochlear implants. We need a new one. Okay, so I start working on that. There was another guy that was working there, and then at some point, they wanted to. They hired me with the thought that I was going to be the technical lead for this project, and so a year into it, they said, okay, so now you need to expand your, you got your architecture for the system. Now you need to expand. Let's hire some more people, and so I'm sitting there now, like, all right, so we're going to hire some more people. Who do I look for, right? Who am I looking for? And I thought, am I looking for biomedical engineers? Well, no, not really. I mean, the guy I'm looking for, or the woman, has to be somebody who really understands user interfaces. It has to be somebody who understands how to get into databases. It has to be somebody who understands how to program C# and and knows the the infrastructure and stack and whatever. And so so the people that we were hiring were software engineers. Like that's because that's what we needed. That's the skill that we needed. And I'm still kind of bored. Like I want to I want to do this really cool technology that I came here for. And I started thinking, okay, where's the who does this, right? And I realized, okay, it's a systems engineering department is who does this. So we had electrical engineering department, mechanical engineering department, software engineering department, systems engineering department. This was all R&D, right? And then of course manufacturing, and then quality control and sales, that kind of thing, support. So, but in R&D, this was the thing. So okay, so then I went to the systems department and I was like, well, what can I do here? I realized I didn't know anything. Like it was like I had to learn something, and then because we're interfacing with the nervous system. Last biology class I took was in 8th grade. Like I don't really know what this is. I just think it's cool. And so then then it occurred to me, okay, so who gets these cool jobs that seem so cool to me, right? And it was a handful of people, and really out of that systems group, there was probably 3-4 people who really knew their stuff in terms of what we all are here for, right? The rest of the people, there was a firmware engineer who really knew his firmware, right? I mean, this guy could really he didn't know any biology. It was like that, and so it was a small minority, very small minority of the people in the R&D who were doing the stuff that I thought was really, really cool. But I thought it was really, really cool. And so I went to the university, got my PhD, and then I was going to end up potentially working for one of these companies doing this kind of stuff. Ended up in academia. This is my dream job. I'm not moving. But that's basically. But that was my experience. My experience was electrical engineers, right? Electrical engineering department, cochlear implant companies hiring electrical engineers. These are people who know how to lay out an ASIC, right? Mechanical engineers are hiring mechanical engineers who know how to work with polymers, who know how to work with SolidWorks, and so it was. So in a way, what I've been seeing recently, right, these developments that Julia was talking about, and and Neuralink, and this is fantastic because I think everybody in this room is looking for the kind of amazing stuff that I was looking for, and I think it's really important to kind of focus in on the kind of stuff that you guys would want to do, because even though many of you have experiences in electrical engineering, your goal is to do something with neuroengineering, and I think that is kind of what I'm hoping that this panel can focus on, because really, as a neuroengineer, you don't want to get out and start, even though you have a really good background in laying out ASICs, you don't want to be the ASIC engineer just doing ASICs. Like you want to be doing something that is meaningful in terms of this neuroengineering. So that's my shtick. That's all I Okay, so so as I guess sort of maybe if we can go around and we can introduce ourselves and then we can kind of progress from there. And this was just basically something to sort of start things off.
Sure. Would you like me to provide a similar story or background?
Yeah, well, I mean, you can either provide a background story or talk about yourself, talk about what
Sure. Well, hello everyone. I'm Brock Wester. I'm from the Johns Hopkins University Applied Physics Lab, which was highlighted in this talk, so that was really cool to see, and the history as well. So I've been at APL for about 12 years, and I'd say my origin story, so to speak, is similar to Gene said. I was a computer engineer, did a co-op at Panasonic. I was writing low-level driver software for 3 years as a student. And I really enjoyed that a lot, and I liked the people I work with, but I didn't see that as what I wanted to do for a career. And so I started exploring classes in the biospace, and Georgia Tech didn't have a biomedical engineering undergrad at the time. This is the 90s. But they had a minor, and they had a pre-med. So I explored both, and thought this was amazing. But I didn't know what I wanted to do in terms of a job with this, like, the class that I'd taken and my interests. And so I thought, okay, well, I need to go to grad school. I like teaching, I like doing research, and so this is the best path. And I actually stayed at Georgia Tech for another 6 years. I think in total it was like 11 I was there, which is a long time. But similarly, as I got toward the end of my PhD work, it was unclear like what I wanted to do. I was involved with a couple startups. Georgia Tech, similar to Hopkins, had a venture capital organization, like a small business incubator there, and I was involved with what I thought were some really cool technologies. But there was this crisis sort of on the horizon where, as soon as I graduated, I had to start pulling a salary, and the companies, weren't quite there. We had sold some products, but it wasn't viable enough to bring me on as an employee. So I started looking around. And actually, one of the co-founders from one of the companies I was involved with heard about an opportunity at Hopkins at the Applied Physics Lab. And at the time, they were growing their research department, which I'm part of now, in the biospace, and particularly biomems, which is what I was involved with. I was fabricating electrodes, flexible electrodes, actually very similar to Neuralink's electrodes, actually. Yeah. But yeah, I went to APL. I've been there like 12 years, like I said. I joined the RP team, Revolutionizing Prosthetics team, in 2012, thereabouts. And I got to work with wonderful people like Spencer, who we'll hear about soon. Just, it was a nice combination of the experiences I had to date. So obviously software is the core of everything, pretty much. And that was a big part of what I did for that effort. But I was involved with some of the clinical studies, working with the teams to come up with ideas for experiments, and some of the systems engineering piece, which again is key for brain-computer interfaces. And I eventually got to the point where I was overseeing some studies, and I was actually the last PI for RP, which lasted, I want to say like 14 years. So I outlasted everyone, I guess. And just that was I oversaw the end of the program. I'm now assistant program manager, and I do a lot now what I thought I'd never do, which is write a lot of grant proposals and deal with contracts and things like that. So I'm in a position where I'm helping to set up work for the larger team in the BCI, the neuro AI and connectomic spaces we have at APL. And I think that's probably good. So.
No, that's good. I think we'll come back to them, to the discussion after you guys introduce yourselves, because I think that's probably very important.
Hello, everyone. Thank you, TNT, for providing this opportunity. I'm Anekiani from Abbott, so I think nice stories that we heard here. I have a different story. I saw in the questions that we just talked about what we want to talk today about international students, and I am like a foreigner. I came out from a country, Iran, that I was a minority in both in religion as well as being a woman. There, nobody get to university. Nobody, very limited people can go to graduate school. So from that background, as a woman, I tried always hard to be top. So I went to a university in Iran. It's like MIT here, like Shaikh University. You may have heard of from your friends. It's like famous in the US. People coming from that university. With having a minority in religion, not being a Muslim, there was very hectic to get into that university. I fought a lot with the minister talking about I deserve it. So I'm telling this because I just wanted to tell you that there are a lot of challenges that may come to your life when you just go to your career, and you always can move forward to what you want to reach. So I came to the US to pursue my dreams, because I had a lot of limitation there. Again, back to a lot of restriction that we have. There is no human rights, and you may heard in the news that's what's going on right now. I joined University of Michigan as a for my PhD as a bioinformatics in the bioinformatics department. I developed a lot of new algorithms for gene expression for cancer patients. My dad was diagnosed with cancer during that time, so I had a lot of passion to help in that area. So a lot of machine learning, artificial intelligence, how to solve this issue, how to find the right genes that could be helpful for different types of cancers. I had the opportunity to stay in University of Michigan as a faculty and continue, but I was not up to writing a lot of grants and all of the hectic that I had. I wrote few grants and some got NIH funding, but not all of them. So I just decided to try industry to see how I can land. I joined an authentication company, AI-based data science, all like sensor data, a lot of IoT and processing. I really enjoyed it, but I was not up to data that are not health related. I really wanted to do something with the experience that I had in bioinformatics and bioscience. And my mom was suffering from Parkinson's, so I was just kind of I got a recruiter reaching out to me from Abbott, talking about the neuromodulation division that are looking for a data scientist back to that time. And I learned that Abbott has a product, DBS, deep brain stimulation, that can help Parkinson patients and people that have movement disorders. So I was kind of passionate about, neuromodulation seems a good field. I didn't have any background in neuromodulation. I just joined Abbott about 4 years ago with not knowing anything, but now I'm very passionate to do a lot of cool stuff. Julia had a great talk on BCI. I think that's what my team and also Abbott is moving forward. But when we joined, it was COVID time, so I developed the whole virtual clinic. You may have heard of Abbott has a product that is a telemedicine. You can remotely stimulate patients to cloud-to-cloud infrastructure. We built the whole backend, the pipeline that we built, and right now physicians can stay in their beach house, and patient can be in another beach in West Coast, and physicians can stimulate remotely to the programming clinician programmer, and patients can do it on the implantable devices all remotely. So that was like a pandemic time happened, and we developed that. We have a lot of we are doing a lot of wearable stuff, but in my team we have neuroscientists, we have neuroengineers, and we have a lot of data scientists, computational background. So it's a very diverse combination of all different skill sets. And maybe we get back to this point, but what I learned throughout my whole career so far, that if you like to reach to somewhere and you envision that, if you just try for it, you definitely would reach. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Kyle. I'm here with Ripple, Ripple's a neurotech company. We make primarily research systems for neural recording and stimulation for a wide range of indications and research. And more recently, have a contract manufacturing arm that helps small companies build their implant to get into their first in-man prosthetic faster. I'm in charge of our sales and director of products, so I spend my days going out and meeting with different neurosurgeons and researchers, and really get the opportunity to see what products of ours are working or what's not, or there's a gap for. So I get to design very interesting new products that I never thought I would ever get to, or knew or there was a need for. I really connected with Gene's story a lot, and my background is kind of broad and very interesting, but led to where I'm at right now. I did up through my PhD in electrical engineering at the University of Utah, and I never planned to do a PhD. I kind of fell into it. I got to know my advisor as an undergrad that worked with Second Sight, made prosthetic for people that have gone blind from degenerative diseases. So helping them see again, which I just found incredibly compelling. So bugged him constantly until he gave me a job as an undergrad, and got into software development for it. So worked on simulations for designing new electrodes and finding new parameters to stimulate for. And towards the end of my PhD, I got interested in wanting to start a business and worked with him and Florian from BlackRock, with the Julia had mentioned, to start the entrepreneurship engineering program at the University of Utah. So it was really built around the idea of getting to know business as an engineer. I think it was a 4-course section at the time. I don't know how that's changed, but with the idea you learn enough to go out and start a business. And I ended up starting one with my advisor that did a variety of different things. So this is where I kind of left the neurotech space for a while, and we worked on mostly athletics. So at this point, I moved to USC as a postdoc. I was living in Pasadena, so we worked with the football team there and with Lululemon and a few athletic companies and built wearable sensors to use the tech that we developed for implants for consumer space. And after 5 years or so of that, I decided that I wanted to get back into neurotech, and had some issues with that business as a whole, and so I ended up leaving it and moving back to Utah, and ended up at Ripple after starting a small design and art business for myself. And Ripple's been amazing. Just one thing I found with that is I never thought I could kind of leave and re-enter this space and come back in and be able to have an impact in building new devices. But it's been really great, and it's and getting to know people from BlackRock and Abbott and others. So it's been a very rewarding career.
My name is Spencer Pellis. I'm with BlackRock, and it's really interesting to hear all these stories. I feel like there's so much commonality in many of our backgrounds, and also I find fascinating how much our careers and lives have been intertwined from moment to moment over the course of years. Like others here, I did all of my education in electrical engineering, bachelor's, master's, and PhD. I actually graduated from the University of Utah, like Kyle, and even though we didn't know each other then, we both went to Los Angeles. So after my PhD, I got a postdoc position at Caltech with faculty named Richard Anderson in neuroscience. And my first job at Caltech was to write an application to the FDA for an investigative device exemption to test the Utah array in quadriplegic people. And so I had just written a PhD dissertation, and now I had to turn around and write another 100-page document. It was a lot of fun. And at that time, I was working with Brock closely and others at APL. This was under the Revolutionizing Prosthetics program. And so we got that, and then we started this trial. And so I worked with some of these quadriplegic folks for about 10 years. And one of the most meaningful experiences of my life to meet some of these people who were, at BlackRock we call them pioneers, and they truly are pioneers in the sense that they are taking a giant leap into the unknown to take part in these clinical trials. And just the caliber of people, and I just can't say enough about that experience. After Caltech, or actually sort of during Caltech, based on some of the relationships I had built there, and I will echo what Julia has said about the importance of relationships. I got a position at USC as a research faculty in the Department of Neurosurgery. A few years later, then I left Caltech and joined BlackRock, but kept this position at USC. So my setup right now is that I work part-time at both. I'm a day a week at USC and then the rest of the time at BlackRock, which I think is a fairly unique setup to have sort of 20% of my feet in the academic world and 80% of my feet in the industrial world. But it's been a really valuable experience, and something that I think has given me some insight into both. I guess we can get into more of that later. But yeah, it's been a fun ride. I don't know that. I feel like I didn't really know that all these things were possible when I was starting. I think that I really just tried to take advantage of the opportunities I saw as they came. I think that's sort of been the lesson that I've learned, I suppose, over the course of my career. But yeah, excited to talk more about this.
Okay, great. Can I see how many PhD students we have here? Okay, so it's mostly PhD students. Some master students? Bachelor? Okay, great. Okay, just kind of wanted to get a feel of the land. Okay, so given the audience, then the question I would ask is, you all have, very solid experience in academia as well as the industry. So I would ask, and so here I'm asking on behalf of the audience, but I don't have to do that because the audience is here. You can just raise your hand and ask. But I will raise this question given the audience, and they're going to get their PhDs and masters and bachelor's degrees. What opportunities do they have in the industry, and at those levels, right? At the PhD level and at the master's level, and potentially the bachelor's level, or do they need to go back and learn some more? So I mean, I want to get your experience and your thoughts on it.
I think
Takes a few seconds.
a lot of opportunities. I would say in Abbott we have hiring, first of all, so just please reach out to me. We are looking for neuroscientists, neuroengineers, data scientists, and as you mentioned, doesn't matter you have PhD or master, as long as you have the skill set that can match a position, you should be just applying for what you like and what your dream is. In my team, I have like 2 data scientists that just have a master degree, but they are doing even better than some of the PhDs that I have. So I would say just go from what skill set you have and what you like to do. We have neuroscientists that just finished their masters, and we just brought as interns, and as they are working with us part-time, they are also completing their PhD, so there are another opportunities joining as intern in summer and just continue as a part-time if the industry let you to do that, and also university. That's another opportunity that you can have.
Yeah, I'll say at Ripple we have almost everybody there has a grad degree, but it's definitely not necessary. Our CEO doesn't have his, and so it's and he started as a software engineer with us and moved his way up. And really, like, I started as a support person just to get to know the products and with a PhD, and so we don't necessarily like only hire at like one level or another. It's and a lot of people that come in have just had experience with either our products or with BlackRock's or somebody that's similar and wants to be in that space. And I've also seen people in the last year leave Ripple to go back into academia too. So and go back in and restart a project that they were interested in. So it also doesn't limit you necessarily to having to stay in that space. But we're also always looking for new people, not necessarily actively hiring, but if we, somebody that's a very good, curious person that is interested comes along, then we always have space too. So
Can I expand a little bit on this question? Maybe you could address the kinds of jobs that.
Sure. Absolutely. So there's a wide variety of jobs. So we have, kind of a sector of the company that is more basic science and material science, designing new electrodes and running tests with them to understand if they will fit specific needs of research in the field. And in my case, in designing products for specifically for clinical use and preclinical use, that actually building out the product, I do a lot of industrial design and mostly high-level product that I pass down to our engineering team. But and then most of the engineers themselves will work on those. So it'll be building adapters and new filters and amplifiers for interfacing with electrodes. And then on the other side, we have also PhDs that are building out regulatory processes for building implants. And quality systems, and so it's pretty wide range really across the board.
Yeah, I want to echo a lot of the comments here. APL is very similar in that we are hiring at all levels. As is mentioned in the presentation this morning, and what others said here, is that our teams are very multidisciplinary. So just thinking about revolutionizing prosthetics, we've got lots of electrical engineers, software engineers, mechanical engineers, biomedical engineers, neuroscientists, clinicians, prosthetists, and so it was a big team, and I would say folks at all levels, bachelor's, master's, PhD, and yes, similar to many companies, APL will they want folks to continue to develop through training and through degrees, and so the neuroscience group, which I was the former group supervisor for, we had about 60% PhDs. That was about 25 folks, and then the rest were masters and bachelors, and folks who had bachelors were getting their masters, and we had folks that are getting their PhDs. And so that the company, the team benefits obviously from that, so it's kind of baked into the paradigm. In terms of the types of positions, to your question, so we do a lot of work obviously in neuroprosthetics and BCI, neuroimaging, and we do connectomics, neuroAI. So we are part of the research department. So we're not developing a product. We're doing research at basic research level, applied research level, and mission-oriented research. And so we are looking for folks who aren't going to be doing just one thing, like firmware. Although there are plenty of projects where we need good software engineers, or we need good human subject study experts who can define good experiments and deal with regulatory stuff. But at APL and I imagine at many other places, you're going to get a wide variety of experiences, and so we're looking for someone who is hungry and wants to learn and develop and do different things in the mission spaces that we have, BCI and connectomics and various other things.
To your second question, last year we had intern, a PhD student that's finishing her PhD, and she joined my team, and she said she loves to do project management stuff. So she was very interested to just kind of organize the stuff, just put on all the contracts together, work with field team, with the clinical team, as well as working with institutes and universities. And she just joined after she finished her internship, she joined as a project manager to our team, and we are doing a lot of verbal studies. We need kits to be kind of packed and sent to the site. So she oversees a lot of technicians that do that. So she loved that. As a PhD in neuroengineering, she wanted to do project management, and she's very successful there as well. So in Abbott, we have R&D team that are about 500 people. So in the whole neuromodulation division, we have about 1,000 employees, 500 in R&D. So Abbott spent a lot of money on research and development. We have opportunities, as other folks thought about software engineer, mechanical engineer, systems engineer, what you mentioned. As well as we have also product managers, like there are PhDs that love to do to design products and manage the products. So we have those opportunities as well. We have cloud architecture engineers as well, because we do a lot of cloud computing. And another area that might be interesting that you may not have thought about it is like field scientists. So we have PhDs that go to for the clinical study, they go to the pain doctor offices, or they go to physicians and just train them on how to use our devices. So that's another opportunity that if people like to join. There are opportunities for them just connecting different teams together and also marketing. So we had a PhD that was doing a lot of research in R&D, but he was very interested to learn in marketing. So he just moved to a marketing, and he's very successful because he knows all the products, he knows all the background, and he was a very good person to talk. So he's very successful in marketing. Just another opportunities for you if you like to pursue marketing as well.
To what degree do, let's say, the hardware or mechanical engineers in your group, to what degree do you think they either need or use their neuroengineering ability rather than, say, electrical?
That's a good question. We have, as I mentioned, a variety of people. So we have very good neuroscientists and neuroengineers that are working on different waveforms, because we develop a lot of different waveforms that could be helpful for pain or movement disorder areas that we are working. And they are we are using the Ripple system as well for some of our research, so a lot of collaborations. Hopefully we collaborate with Blackwork soon on our BCI stuff. But the point is, we have people that 100% focus on what they learn as a neuroengineer. Also, we have people that are in 50% of their time they use neuroengineering, but they do a lot of like lead design, helping with electrical engineering and circuit design and all of that. So we have based on the interest and where the skill set land, they have opportunities to join any of those teams or any of those projects. We had a very good person, graduated from Utah University, PhD, that he loves just to run clinical studies. So he's just designing clinical study and running them. I mean, he loves just to work with the person that in my team does project management, and they just write protocols, inform consent, and run the studies. I mean, he didn't do any of his VCI knowledge yet, but that's what his passion was, and there are always room for based on what you like to do.
Yeah, I have a question along that similar train of thought. So this might be a misconception that I have about industry, but this misconception that I have is that when you enter an industry, you end up compromising on the amount of intellectual freedom that you were able to have, that you would have maybe if you're a PI or a professor. So I was wondering, are there certain positions that you would recommend looking for to have this position of intellectual freedom? And what are the essential skills and steps that you need to take to get to those positions?
Yeah, it's a big question. So I do think that is I don't think you're alone in having that conception about the differences between academia and industry. And I would say that's borne out in some ways, but practically speaking may not be quite as drastic a difference as you might otherwise think. On the one hand, I often found in academia, for example, that it wasn't really completely free, right? You are dependent on, you need to get research funding, and so you need to be proposing ideas that are relevant to the available opportunities for the funding. Obviously, within that space, within that context, you are free to propose any idea you want. On the industry side, especially in the early stages of product development, and I will definitely qualify this by saying I'm very young in industry, but I found that there is a lot of need to be creative and to essentially be free to kind of explore options, like different features, different ways of implementing product requirements, etc. You need to be able to move through those quickly. You can't spend a lot of time going down every rabbit hole. But I don't know that I would say that I felt closed off in terms of my intellectual freedom in the industry. So I think your second question was what kinds of positions we would recommend in terms of the most intellectual freedom in industry. I think that my answer there would probably be that So in more of the research and development side of things, and also as you move a little bit higher up, so that you're thinking at a higher level and directing programs as opposed to maybe more of like an entry-level position. These are the kinds of opportunities I believe give you the most ability to think and decide kind of directions, maybe for the group that you run. You know, Brock, for example, has mentioned you had experience running or supervising this neuroscience group. As you start to run groups and you start to map out strategy for those groups, that may actually be true freedom, right? Because you are completely free in the market to establish the products and the strategy that you want. You're also, kind of giving yourself the rope to hang yourself with, as the old adage goes. But I share the same kind of, sentiment, but I do think that practically speaking, I've been very happy in both situations. I haven't felt really limited fundamentally in either one.
Yeah, so plus one to what Spencer mentioned, and he hit on a really key point, which is unless you're independently wealthy, you have to identify funding for the work you're going to do. And a lot of the funding organizations or companies, they have a mission. The institutes for NIH and NIDS and NIDIB and mental health, they all have missions. The BRAIN Initiative has goals. It's identifying, where your funding opportunity is and how your interests align, and then you make your case, and then you can do, and if you have a good idea and a good plan, then you can get the funding that allows you that opportunity. And there's lots of ideas within, a lot of ways in which to solve the problems of various sponsors, or to bring a technology to market. But yeah, and even in developing strategy for a group or for a program area, there's a lot of freedom, and yeah, there are opportunities to make decisions that affect the organization and people. In many ways, though, we're looking at as the talk highlighted this morning, we're looking at what the direction of the field is, what is the vision for sponsors. What are others doing? What are the capabilities of your team? What are your facilities? You have all these things factor into the opportunities that you spend your time pursuing. But to your second part of your question, it could depend on what part of the organization that you're in. So APL is a large place. We have 8,000 plus people. It's massive. And the research department is about 650. But in the research department, on the spectrum with between industry and academia, we're kind of close to academia. There's 6 NIH grants in our portfolio, and we do some DARPA work. We do work with CDMRP and IARPA. So we're doing academic research, and yeah, we propose those ideas and set the plan, so to speak. But we also have work where the sponsor comes to us and says we need this thing, and so there are always constraints. So.
Yeah, I'd say that I almost feel more free in industry than I did in academia. In doing my PhD work, my work was funded on a UO1 grant, so within that 5 years, I had some freedom, but I was stuck along that path somewhat, and it was difficult to kind of go in and out of it. Whereas at Ripple, we have multiple employees that are PIs on grants that they wrote, on behalf of our organization. And because it is a company, they're able to continue to get paid and explore these other opportunities in the meantime, and then hire people in to work on those projects. So it's really allows for continuing to advance research, but at the same time, it's being funded from our sales and from the company continuing. So it's it really allows that freedom, and things move a lot faster, and we're applying for grants and all sorts of areas. And this could also just be, my experience could be different from going to a bigger company or something too, because I've only really worked at small companies. And then to your other question on positions to look for, we have at least the 2 employees that I'm referring to that are PIs on grants. One of them is her title's a clinical scientist, so she came with a PhD working on prosthetic work in academia and came into Ripple wanting to continue that and use our products to advance it, and so wrote a grant and has been a PI seeing that through. And then another that's working on more material science, trying to build new electrodes, but then having a role in building some of these other like products and all too. So it's really does I think give you more freedom to an extent, as long as there's funding and whoever's running your company is open to it. So it's you have to be in the right place, I suppose.
I just add, like, to your point, I was thinking when I joined industry, I'm not going to do that much research, but right now what I'm doing in our team, last year we had like 5 papers, this year about 7 more papers coming out of the researches that we are doing in clinical studies, as well as a lot of invention disclosures. So one beauty of like joining industry is they fund you just to have as many as patents that you can have. So like my team last year, we had 30 invention disclosures, just like this year we are targeting 45. Like we put in our goal this year we have to hit that many. Many of them are new algorithms that we just file new algorithms to close the loop in the patient. So there are, whenever you have ideas, I think the good thing about industry is they fund your ideas to get patented. Even though, they are not your own patents in terms of you can take it to your company and just build it, but at least your idea can go to a product that you are passionate about it.
Becca,
Oh, great. Yeah, so I have a question. A lot of us are PhD students, and sort of by definition, we're studying these very narrow research problems with like particular approaches. And so I'm curious, both in your personal experience and also when you're looking at hiring somebody, how strong is the correlation between somebody's PhD dissertation and then what they wind up working on in industry, and what are sort of the most transferable skill sets?
That was something I was really worried about after I did my PhD, especially because I went into business doing things that were very unrelated to it. So when I left that, I didn't think I'd even find a job, and I was very concerned in general. But I will say, so in that work, when I did leave and I was hiring, I personally didn't consider like somebody's dissertation title or even their resume in general always when considering hiring them. It was the person themselves and the work that they were doing, and seeing if they proved themselves to fit the role that they're applying for, regardless of whatever their dissertation was. And then once I did leave and decided to come back into this field, it didn't take long to get offers getting back into work too. And so I'd like to think that you're not limiting yourself too much necessarily. And coming into Ripple and doing product management was not something that fit my computational work as my PhD either. So it's so for me personally, it wasn't as scary as I thought it would be.
I'll just say a few quick words while you're getting set up. So, especially I think at the level of the PhD, you're hiring people more than you are, whatever other qualification you might put on your resume. And I had this conversation last night at dinner, or something very relevant to it, that I think as a PhD student, you shouldn't discount the sort of the meta qualities about your experience as a PhD student. For example, the fact that you actually pursued something for 4 to 6 years and achieved it. That's honestly, like that says something about a person, right? That you achieved something that you set out to do over a multi-year process. It required complex thinking, understanding a problem, mapping out a solution to that problem, and then going out and doing it. And I would say that that's probably fundamentally what you bring as a PhD student, way more than your whatever dissertation title. And a small, but to me somewhat funny anecdote on that is that when Jess asked me to write up a bio for myself, I was kind of tickled to think that I would put my dissertation title in my bio so you can go read it. But the funny part to me is that I didn't remember the title of my dissertation. I go pull up the PDF and go. So
You
anyway,
didn't have to look it up.
yeah, that's so that yeah. Nobody, not one person, has ever asked me the title of my dissertation.
That was a great point. I think in industry, we usually look for the skill set and critical thinking of but when we interview with someone. Myself, I never look at even the thesis, what was the title of that person, and usually it's not in the resume. I mean, people don't put their thesis title in the resume. So to your point, as much as you can be a problem solver and a critical thinker, you always have a space in any industry or academia if you want to stay. And another point that I wanted to raise is like when I interview someone, I always come up with a challenging question or like a challenging situation just to see how they can solve that. So be prepared if you want to join industry. For the data scientist people that I want to just hire, I always come up with a data challenge question or data challenge algorithm that they can solve like within like the next 10-15 minutes live or sometimes like a week time based on how challenging that question is. So that's another area that you can be prepared for.
Yeah, I had to sit and think about your question for a little bit because I don't know. I guess maybe Spencer is continuing some of the work he did from Anderson's lab, but yeah, I don't know if you polled all the folks that have a PhD that are working in industry and academia. It may not be many that are directly continuing the work from their thesis work. I'd say academia, maintaining a position in academia is probably the best way to continue that because you have, to your point, like more control, I'd say, or I'm going to propose this idea to this opportunity. But even folks who might go to a postdoc, unless they're bringing like some skill like that is a novel thing like CRISPR or foundation models, which is a hot topic now, and bringing that to a new lab that they can then embed themselves in that lab and teach the lab that skill. Most postdocs, I think you're kind of pivoting a little bit in many cases. So yeah, the person is the key thing. We do have folks at APL that are continuing their work from grad school. Nidhi Staker, who was here earlier, Luke Osborne came out of the lab and he's continuing a lot of the stuff that he did in grad school. Matt Pfeiffer, who you'll see at the APL table later today, the same. And there's definitely opportunity, but yeah, I think I think in many cases folks might find that there are other things to pursue, and they're really good at a lot of things. You are developing skills that are valuable in a lot of fields. So.
Great.
So I understand that building relationships and networking throughout your PhD career is important, but sort of as you're approaching the end, what timeline do you recommend for actually like reaching out to someone and saying, hey, I'm looking for a job?
Yeah, well, I'll start, and I know there are lots of thoughts here. It might depend on what you might want to do. So for academia, there are only so many positions to be an assistant professor out of grad school or even out of a postdoc. In many cases, you have to have a presence, presenting at conferences and have folks be aware of your work, and so it's sort of a posture and it's sort of a mindset through your time in grad school in terms of how you get the word out about your research, and then being a part of organizations like TNT and others, and being at academic conferences and networking and meeting people. There, the community's awareness of your work or who you are helps generally for any role, but especially for academia. Yeah, I'll get off the stage, but yeah, there's lots of thoughts.
I echo on conferences. You can find a lot of industry or like academia partners that they are recruiting that you can reach out to them. And in industry, another channel is internship. So try to get internship every summer, and you can approach different industries, learn, and see what you like to continue.
Another comment I would make on that question is that I think the people I've seen most successful at that are people that view it more as a continuous process than like a timeline that I need to go reach out to somebody at this certain date before my graduation. I've been very impressed by a number of people just in the field who just randomly connect with me on LinkedIn and ask to have a 30-minute conversation with me. These are typically not people looking for jobs. They're just people who just want to know what I do and what BlackRock does. And likewise, I think internships, conferences, all of these things are more of a process, right? Like you start to introduce yourself to people, you make sure that they see your progress as you work closer towards graduation. They understand who you are and what you're doing, right? So that by the time you're looking for the job, it's not like now you're trying to meet them. It's that they know who you are and you are now available, kind of thing.
Yeah, I'm going to second that. If you can go to conferences and have your PI also go to these conferences, at least I see that as being part of my job is to introduce you to people and be that in go-between. I think it's really important for faculty to be able to do that, but also even if they're not participating, just going to conferences is a really good idea because there is. So one thing I'll kind of point out is almost everybody here except for Anna, I think, is working for smaller research type groups, right? And yeah. So the thing is, this field is fairly new still, and so the transition between academia and the real world is still pretty blurred, and so I think you have a lot and a lot of startups, a lot of new innovations. There's a lot of that because this is you may have giant pharmaceutical companies that have a lot of already well-established stuff. There's not that much in this field. It's cochlear implants, but a lot of stuff is sort of starting up and sort of moving in the direction of innovation, which is where I think all of us here are really interested in. Right, we're in it because this is kind of amazing stuff, and you want to work on the new stuff, and you want to push the boundary. And I think there's a lot of opportunity happening now.
Yeah, I mean, I was going to say something really similar to what Spencer said too, is that I don't think there is a time to necessarily do it that's like defined. It should be a continuous process, and I second that. Like, I love when people reach out on LinkedIn just to talk, and happens a lot. And same at conferences, like students will come up and talk to me, and I stay in touch with some, and I've put some in contact with people I know in other companies that I think they'd be a good fit for. It's not like I'm just recruiting for Ripple. We'll try to help them out if possible, because it's, like Dean said, it is a small community. Like, it's an oddly tight-knit, and meet people that I didn't realize were in the same field even that I'll run into. But yeah, and you can reach out at any time. And if you ever do want to, of course, reach out to me or any of us. But it's I think that's always the case. One of the people I last hired, I met at a dog park just with our dogs playing, and just 2 years later applied and ended up coming in. So I talked to him for years before he even was finishing his program, but he was interested in the subject and ended up coming in and working with us, and it worked out great. So it's I think that's you shouldn't necessarily put limits.
Yeah, that first opportunity, that first meet is really key, whether it's at a conference, LinkedIn, the hot dog park. And yeah, just thinking about the hires, that we've had recently, we follow what's happening in the field, and so we have partner labs, and we will hire from those labs in many cases. But yeah, if we have someone that's intern, very high chance of being hired, and so getting that internship spot actually is kind of that first job, really. So,
okay, Mark, you want?
Yeah. So my question, I think all of you have different mixtures of academic and industrial work-life balance, I guess. And I think for some of us, and maybe a lot, we're kind of interested in all of it. And you could say enthusiastically we're just curious, or negatively we're afraid to commit, or something. I don't know. But how common is it, or are there opportunities postdoctorally to kind of still keep the parallel paths do both. I know, Spencer, you have a kind of unique setup right now, but is that really unique? Are there a lot of opportunities you have to commit to one, build a reputation, and then people will be interested in giving you part-time, mixed, academic, industrial, life? So yeah, I guess that's kind of my question. How do you maybe keep both tracks going?
Yeah, it's a very good question, and one that I care a lot about. I honestly feel like I lucked out quite a bit with my setup. I'm not aware of many other people besides one other at BlackRock actually that have a similar setup. I've seen other examples of similar things over the course of just people I've known. For example, like Anna has mentioned, it is not at all impossible to maintain an academic reputation in industry by continuing to publish and attending conferences. And in fact, I know one faculty at the University of Utah who worked at Intel, but just basically at night did his own research and published, and then got hired as faculty, pretty much right out of that. My PhD advisor at the University of Utah was sort of the other direction, so he was faculty, but very entrepreneurial. And this is similar with Florian Sulzbacher, the co-founder and chairman of BlackRock, who currently maintains both positions as chair of the Department of Electrical Engineering in Utah and chairman of BlackRock. And nobody knows how he does that, but he does. My advisor, my PhD advisor, I think he started something like 5 companies. In fact, he has space in the BlackRock building, so I feed him every now and then. So I think the bottom line here is that there may not be a recipe for exactly how it works out, but kind of no matter the path you take, you can choose to maintain your connections in that direction.
And so I actually had a very similar, almost identical experience because I worked like 10% of my time at USC while I was running a business on the side. As my main job. I was doing a little bit at USC, continuing research, and really it was because I wanted the research I had built to continue, and I had written some grants that got funded, and I wanted to see it through to an extent, at least get students trained to continue with it. And so I found that, something that it just kind of happened. It wasn't like I planned to do that either. But one example I wanted to note was Jessie at Ripple, who I'm here taking the spot for. She has the flu right now, so couldn't make it. But she was our director of sales at Ripple and was there for 6 or 7 years, and just an amazing person in general. She's awesome at sales, but a good, just in the technology space in general. But she recently left Ripple because she didn't necessarily want to just be a salesperson and wanted to continue building new products and maybe even building, another company. And immediately when she left, got plenty of offers to come into labs to be the PI, to start new studies again. And I think if anything, it's just become confusing trying to figure out what to do now. But it shows that the opportunity is still there no matter what. And she probably could have done that at the same time if she had the time to do it. But it's encouraging to see that, at least for me too, if I end up on that same path, because you never know, it could shift that way.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I've seen folks' careers go back and forth. There's a PO at NIH that just left, and he was overseeing a BCI portfolio, and now he's back in kind of the academic space and doing research again. So yeah, maintaining connections all while this is happening and thinking about new ideas and things like that. But you're not going to be binned into one space if you go to a company or be a postdoc. Your opportunities are not going to be constrained. So don't worry too much.
So I don't want to steal the thunder from the panel. I'm Jessica from BlackRock. But I do want to echo what everyone's saying here, the relationship key thing. Think about your vendors. You guys are all working in labs to some degree, and we actually hire a lot of folks who are our customers, and they end up coming into us. So if there is a product or a path that you love and that you actually want to expand and improve and do the work on, you can always reach out to the vendors that you partner with. And that's how we've received several of our staff. Spencer being one of them was a customer of BlackRock. and they got to know our support team really well, and became, our key person. So, and going back, same with Ripple. That's all it is. So I mean, there are opportunities to still be in both fields for sure. So don't discredit your partners that you have in the lab.
So I think that was a great point. I just remember that my team was working with Microsoft on a lot of services that we bring for our cloud computing. And I found a very good cloud architect that knows everything in Microsoft. I just added her to my team. I think that's the same scenario, right? If you find a talent, just go and ask and just bring it. So I think that's another point. And to your question, I think one maybe avenue could be just you join companies as intern, and also you are doing your PhD or postdoc, but you can continue as a part-time, right? And you can just taste both of the world. Which one you like better, and just continue as a part-time for a while, and just think about, do you want to stay in this combination, or do you want to just completely switch to industry or academia? That would be another thing.
Other questions?
So a PhD is a long journey, and I found that my interests when I started and when I was an undergrad and now are quickly evolving. So in terms of looking for an internship, what do you guys think is the best time to do so, and what are some tips to set ourselves up for success to fully explore our time at whichever company we choose and takes us in, especially looking for a job post-graduation?
I think there is no limitation. You can start in undergrad, grad. I mean, we have students like second year in undergrad, third year in undergrad. They just like to do some verbal stuff. They just join, based on what you want, just to pursue your approach. And if there are positions in the industry, you can get into. So right now that you're a PhD student, I think you can start from the first summer. Just reach out and just build that relationships and start networking. There is no time frame for it.
Yeah, lots of flexibility. I'm always go to the logistics, just thinking about practicality and that kind of thing. I don't know how the program is structured in terms of coursework. I imagine it's front-loaded, so maybe after a couple of years you're not taking classes, but planning around that. And then if you have an implanted human participant, or cell work, animal work lined up, so just there are times where it's going to be opportunity to kind of halt what you're doing, and they're there. You just have to plan it out and talk to your advisor or your committee and just make sure that they're aware. But they want you to do that too, because then that's going to make you successful in your career and set you up for that next thing, which is what they want. Because you can't stay in the lab forever. So, but yeah, just coordination, logistics, but it's lots of flexibility.
Maybe one brief addition to that is I also think it may depend a bit on what you want out of the internship. Your intention in pursuing that. If it's, for example, to try and get a feel for what you want in a career, probably earlier the better. If it's more that you've identified a company that you're very interested in, then that might be like potentially part of a process, but maybe something a little bit later stage where you're starting to actually, you're going to be available very soon and you want to start building that, like the concrete relationship and a potential job offer at the end. The second part of your question, though, I also thought was interesting, which was how do you make sure you take full advantage of an internship? There's probably lots of answers to that, but at least one thing that I've tried to work with the interns that I work with to do is to make sure that you branch out at the company and meet a lot of people, understand all of the roles at the company. Sometimes, I've even kind of loaned interns out to other departments, to do little projects here and there.